Okay. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Today we're going to be talking about the impact that the collaborative and proactive solutions model has had on you as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, and as a certified provider. So can you share more?
Yeah, so just a little bit about my journey with CPS. It was introduced to me when I first became a principal here at Alice Brown Elementary in Langley. We had a number of behavioral challenging students and led to a lot of challenges prior to me being assigned to Alice Brown. And certainly one of the reasons why I was there with just the previous principal and what had happened from September until January of me being assigned to Alice Brown of 2018. So it's been just over 5 years now of me being here. But it was introduced to me early in my tenure here and as a potential strategy to support students that show challenging behavior and how to work with them. And right off the get-go, however it seems so intuitive, it certainly was a shift in terms of how we approach students. Looking at all students, as we know, all students would want to do well, and doing well is preferable. And changing the viewpoint from that, instead of looking at a choice and having students or choosing to behave or choosing to this, like all students want to do well. And that fundamental shift in our own mind that every kid is trying their best. And we know that in our own lives as adults, that things don't always work out and we don't always respond to certain situations as well as we would like to, but we're doing our best in very difficult situations, especially over the last few years with COVID and what it's been like in schools. We're doing our darndest, and we ask for grace from people, and so we got little kiddos in front of us. Certainly, as an educator and as somebody who works with students who are during this time of their life where they are learning all aspects of human development, whether it's the intellectual side of things or the social side of things, we need to look at them in a very positive way, that they're doing their best. And when they can't meet expectations that we place on them, it's not due to choice, it's due to not having the skills yet. And so for me, the fundamental shift kind of happened, and where I really jumped into this, where a bit of a story of being a parent now, where, when you first start CPS, it's hard to do it well. It takes some time. It's not something that just, when you start talking about LSUPs or Plan Bs, it's not something that if you follow this, you're not doing it perfectly right off the get-go. And, you may have a very clumped, unsolved problem that you're trying to get a kid to talk about, and they're like, no, and it's really hard to drill down off the get-go, but as you get used to it, it gets better. So anyways, while I was sort of struggling through this a little bit, my son, who is now in grade 2, was learning how to swim, and I had him in swimming lessons. And I'll never forget this, because he was in swimming lessons and I could see him doing this in the water and wouldn't go in the water, wouldn't go put his head under. And, I walked over to help the instructor, and I brought him out, and he was upset and crying. I don't want to put my head underwater, Dad. I want to put my head underwater. And I said, well, you got to try. You're not going to learn how to swim. Put your head underwater, blah, 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 blah. And I did what every good parent does in those moments is, if you do this, I'll take you to the toy store after and buy you a toy. And so the reward punishment model. And so he said, okay, Daddy, I'll try it. I'll do it. And then he gets back in the water, puts his head under, gets it back up. And then he's doing this again. And I walk over and I said, okay, let's go. And so he was upset. I was, we get in the car, and I was certainly, planning him at the time. And, how could you not do this? You need to learn and all this kind of stuff. And he's in the back seat crying, and I'm frustrated, and I'm just like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? My relationship right now in this hard moment for my son, let's look at it in a Ross Green perspective and a CPS perspective. He's doing the best he can. So there's something getting in his way. And so I asked him, I said, hey, bud, you had a difficult time putting your head underwater and swimming. What's up? And he started telling me these things that I had no idea. And it came down to his biggest challenge was that he didn't like water going in his nose. So the goggles didn't matter, because water still went up in his nose and I ended up buying him. I said, there's goggles that do cover your nose as well. So we came up with a plan that he was going to try those. And so we tried him, and he didn't want to go to the swimming lesson again until we had tried it. So we actually tried him in our bathtub, and he put his head underwater. He goes, I think these are going to work. And then he went to his next swimming lesson, and sure, he was the only kid with these giant goggles on, big nose thing underwater, but he put his head underwater and he learned to swim. And then that summer, it went from the big giant goggles with a nose thing to like small goggles to like no goggles at all. And I looked at that and I said, what a perfect example of how problem solving with your child, instead of this adult imposed consequence plan A, where this relationship was just getting destroyed. I listened to him and I talked to him and I found out what was really hard, and I worked with him to solve something. He couldn't tell me that right off the get-go, that this is the problem. He was 3 at the time, or 3.5, or whatever he was, maybe 4. And then I thought, like, if we look at school in the same light, where we've got kids who can't meet a certain expectation that we placed on them, we give them some strategies till they can meet it. And that is like, the goggles, or can help them, take a break, or go for a walk, or, write something, whatever the plan is, it can, there's something to this. So I really, at that point, that is where I decided to say, you know what, there's something different with this. There's something with this that I really need to get better at. And that's when I jumped into, went into the 24-week certification course and became a certified provider of CPS, and really take it on as my one approach that I steadfastly use with all of my students, and sometimes parents, and with students at my school out in Langley. So Alice Brown is a K-7 school. I'm the lone administrator here. And just in terms of like our staff, we've got, I don't know, probably somewhere around 8 to 10 staff that have taken the 3-day certification course, the advanced training. And just the way that we talk about student behavior has completely shifted. No longer is it this kid is choosing to do this and this kid is manipulating us. He can do that. Well, if he could do it, he would. So right now there's something getting in his way. We need to find out what that is. And I think the big thing that, like, if I look at this like formative change within me and as educators, I think it's really hard sometimes for us when you get in that kind of power struggle with a kid, where like this kid needs to know that this is not okay. And right now they're, we're going toe to toe and they're getting angry and I'm getting upset. And, in the CPS model, that plan C out, for us as adults to know that these are children and we're in this power struggle right now, where I'm asking them to do something. There's an expectation placed on them that they are having a difficult time meeting, and they're responding in either a violent way or a confrontational way, or whatever the case may be. And I need to say, it's okay if I walk away from this right now and let the kid win, right? Because I'm seeing this. We're still going to deal with this, but not right now. And I think that just that itself, that one piece has really significantly changed the big moments. We don't see those big moments from kids behaviorally anymore, where it's just like we're pushing, and then boom, where we're pushing, no, it's not happening. All right, well, it doesn't look like you're ready right now, but we are going to talk about this when you are, because we need to solve this problem. Okay. And then boom, we move forward. And then at some point in time, when the child's ready and I'm ready, or whomever's ready, we're both out of our amygdalas, we can actually solve this problem. But right now, when this power struggle is ensuing, nothing good's going to come from this if we keep pushing. So, like, in terms of how I approach kids and how I support kids in these challenging situations, it has fundamentally changed the way I approach students when they're struggling to meet the expectations. And we know as educators, we put a lot of expectations on kids. So as a parent, it's changed the way I approach my own child, where he'll come to me and say, Dad, like, I have a tricky moment, something's going on at home, and his brother are fighting. And it's like, Dad, we need to solve a problem right now. He'll say that to me, and I'll say, yeah, man, we definitely do. Or I'll say to him, it looks like, you need to take a couple minutes here, and we need to solve this before we can move forward, because things aren't going well right now. And so I have these plan B conversations with my kids all the time. As a principal, anytime I have a new student come to the school, or if a parent comes in and their child's having a difficult time, I educate the parents, and I talk about this as the approach that I take with kids. So your kid's coming in here, he's come from another school, he's had some difficulties there. Well, when he has some challenges here, you're not going to get a lot of consequences from me. You're not going to get he's going to miss this, or he's not allowed to go to this, or it's hey bud, you're having a difficult time playing safe outside. You and I need to solve a problem, and perhaps we need to share, our solution with your parents after, and with your teacher after, because what happened today at lunch can't happen again. You weren't playing safely, and blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's shifted away from that consequence approach, that adult imposed consequence things, to problem solving with kids. And so as a principal of a school, sorry if I'm rambling on here a little bit, if this is what you
this is great.
yeah, but as a principal of the school, I think that the thing that has changed the most for me is that my relationship with all students, but certainly my students that have the most difficult time meeting the expectations of school, has completely changed. I used to be like, I was a high school vice principal, and then I was a middle school vice principal, and then I went into the elementary world. And I felt that even in those first few years before I found out about CPS, I was always doing this relationship dance with kids, where things are going well, and this kid makes it, has a difficult time meeting some expectation, behavior ensues, there's a consequence, they're mad at me, I got to impose a consequence, they're choked, then I've got to build this relationship back up, and then another thing happens, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just doing this with those really tricky kids. And now the shift has been where, when a kid's having a difficult time meeting an expectation, we sit down and I empathize and I listen and I understand what's going on in their world. And they know that like legitimately, I'm trying to find out what's making it hard for them. And I don't know until we have that conversation how I can help support them, how we can come up with a solution. And my relationship with them just goes like this through those tricky times. They know I got their back. They know that when they are having difficulties, that I'm not going to throw the book at them. The hammer's not coming out and you're going to get, Mr. Carlisle screaming at you in his office. No, I don't need to do that. I haven't, that hammer's gathering dust. And haven't had to use it for a long time. And frankly, I never want to use it again. So, the way that I approach that, parents know that I care about their kids. I'm listening. They come home and say, Mr. Carl, I'll help this, not just he suspended me. I haven't suspended a kid in I think 3 or 4 years. Kid has not been suspended from our school based because we were constantly building and solving problems with these kids as they run into difficulties. So what else can I say about that? I think that we've had some tricky moments and some tricky times with some kids that, as we've planned bead them over time, we've moved away from category H designation, so intensive behavioral kids, into with safety plans, into area times where we no longer need safety plans for them, and their designations move into an R or even just none. We've moved away from some of those behavioral challenging kids into a point where they know that we problem solve with them so often that we've helped solve their the skills, or their lagging skills. We've helped them build them up through constant plan B conversations. So it's changed this school in a number of different ways, but that's certainly a big one that I see. And as we know, as educators, those are some of our most vulnerable students when it comes to whether they graduate or not. Those intensive behavioral and moderate behavioral kids, graduation rates are significantly lower than other students, and so those are the ones that we really need to be focusing on in terms of supporting them and helping them meet the expectations of school. So so I mean, there's a lot there.
There is, but one thing I'd like to add and include, Mike, is I'm so happy to hear you've gone from high school to middle school to elementary school, because look how many children you are saving
Well,
from the
yeah.
challenges at those other age groups by meeting them in elementary school and them learning those skills at a much younger age. One thing that I would like to ask you, or because it's come up at some of the live events that we've had of administrators attending the trainings, that the issue was there was never time. They don't have time. It was, I don't know, at the time it was easier to suspend the child than it was to go through the process of doing a plan B. What can you say to other administrators about that?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you want to put your time. I mean, we all know that energy and time is finite and
Right.
only have so much to give. But if you want to give energy into the same thing over and over and over again, versus spending some front loading time to help support a child to meet an expectation, and then maybe you'll never have to have that conversation again. I think it's time well spent. It does take time. I mean, me kicking a kid out of a classroom takes 5 seconds, right?
Right.
Nope, problem's gone, right? Problem's gone right now.
Right.
However, I've done very little, if anything, and I'd say none, nothing, to help give them the skill to meet that expectation next time. So
Right.
you could have that 2-minute, 3-minute, really negative interaction 15, 20 times throughout the course of a year, or and let's face it, it's a yucky, uncomfortable, relationship killing type of interaction, versus I can sit down with this child for 15, 20 minutes and let them know that I care about them and I'm going to listen to what their problem is and solve it with them, so that hopefully this won't ever happen again. And I would never say that a plan B conversation is a waste of time, even if it doesn't go well. And I mean, go well in terms of it didn't solve the problem. You're still finding out a concern that they have, and you've helped work them through it. So it may not be the one you're trying to solve right now, but it might help something else down the road. So there's lots of times where, and I use this as an example, where I've got a student who's having a difficult time keeping their hands and feet to themselves outside at recess. And I mean, there's 10, 15 plan Bs that I've had with said child, but each time they're realizing that safety is a priority and that we need to have a problem solved before I can feel comfortable, feel that you can go outside and interact with these kids again, because the last time you're in there's something happened that made it hard for you to play safely. So let's talk about it. Let's figure it out, so that if that happens again, you're going to be able to be safe in that situation. And there might be 15 different things that are really hard for this kid to play safely. And each time I'm knocking one off, that eventually down the road, we've knocked them all off. And this child no longer, has difficult time in the expectation. I mean, it's time, but it's time well spent. And I mean, you're helping a child translate those skills and those problem solving solutions to other things. I liken CPS, and I use this example often, and I don't know if I got it from one of Ross's books, or I sort of manufactured in my own mind, but I look at it like a grade 1 student who, if I'm at a guided reading table or guided reading table with a student in grade 1, and they're having a difficult time reading, whatever it is, they can't sound out a word, there's something, whatever the case may be, something getting in their way, if it's just phonetically or they're don't know some of the basic rules to, I don't say you can't read, get out of my classroom, get out, right? You sit there and you work with a child and you spend the time, because next time when they need to read, they're going to need that skill in order to meet that expectation. Where in behavior, we approach it differently when we expect these children to have all of these skills. And as we know, the last couple years have been so difficult for kids socially, that when they come into our school, we still have this expectation that they should know these things. And they truly don't know how to interact the same way that maybe they did 10, 15 years ago, when there was less technology, and when COVID didn't exist, and when socially they could run and play with all their friends and weren't wearing masks and blah, 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 blah. Well, now we've got more students that are coming to school with less skills socially, behaviorally, and we still have the same expectations in our schools that these kids need to meet in order to do school, in order to be successful. So yeah, any of these conversations that you have with a child who's having a difficult time meeting expectation is useful time, and it's front loading, it's proactive, it's relationship building, it's all good. It's trauma informed approach with kids. It shows them that you care about them. It shows them that you want to listen, and that you care enough to listen, and that I'm here for you. And I think that itself, if that's all it is, and it doesn't end up solving the problem, but you're telling a child that you're having a hard time right now, I'm not kicking you out of class, I'm not getting rid of you, I care about you, and I'm here for you no matter what, and we're going to solve this, because I know that you want to do well, and doing well is preferable, so I'm here for you. And ultimately that's the approach. So anyways, I tend to
I love your enthusiasm, Mike. I really, you're so enthusiastic about working with children, and I know it's a huge payoff for any of those students in your school, or for the staff to know that they've been heard too. But I think the bottom line is, when a child feels heard and gets that sense that you are listening and responding to them, it's huge. And you're bubbling over with this enthusiasm that I love seeing. I love speaking to you about your work, because you obviously love what you do. So I'd like to really thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with the CPS model. Thank you again.
No problem. Anytime.